invites people. I just cold DM people like how you did 2 years ago. Just give me a little bit of shit, but nothing crazy. Yeah, it's a lot of it is pretty individual. I mean, I could not do a lot of this stuff without friends like this world we're in right now, built by Mane VR. Really talented world artists who put in a lot of time and effort into creating that system over there. The whole camera system and the lighting, and for us to look as good as we do with realistic lighting per se. And I gave you a tour before, so
Yeah, you were just showing me this place, and dude, I was blown away. Like, podcast studio, you have it made here. Like, your friend did an awesome job creating this world. He's got like a pool table, he's got like a
she
hangout lounge.
she she.
Homeboy's got like a pool here and like an outdoor area, like an atrium. Like, yo, this is the setup, dude. You got the setup going on.
Yeah, yeah, but a part of me still kind of likes the idea of going around to a whole bunch of different worlds in VR chat and doing interviews there. I think that's a great place to start and even to continue because you get a whole variety of places. I think for this world in particular, it feels a little bit more formal. And if I was to throw any large events with just me and my friends, we could definitely do that here as well. So it's it's good. I like it. I don't use it as much as I should, but I mean, you're always welcome to use it yourself. And again, we've made it intentional so you can remove the logos in the backdrop, which is removed now, but there's usually a turtle logo. But a lot of my gripes with podcast specific worlds is that they say they're podcast worlds, but their branding is everywhere, which to be fair, they made it. It is their world, but I do want the idea of people to use it without any sort of boundaries or restrictions. This world isn't perfect, but it gets the job done, and it's really good.
Well, I'm definitely going to get some mileage out of it. Like, thank you for opening up that offer. I saw all of the lighting that you were working with back there, and I was amazed at it. Like, you really understand what you're aiming at, and I like the setup, I like the feel, I like the customizability. You best believe I'm going to be using it, and I'm going to give you guys a shout out every time I do. So, just want to say thank you for that.
I greatly appreciate it, man.
Yeah, and another thing too is like you've been in this business for like a hot minute now. What's it been? A couple of years? Like what got you started in like the whole VR chat content sort of space?
Oh man, that's like a question I answer a lot, but I feel like I always have different answers to. It's not that my journey is any different, but I feel like what gets me started, to sum it up, I had a friend of mine who invited me to play VR chat during the whole COVID era. So we picked up Quest 2s, hung out in the Great Pug, plugged it into our PC so we get access to all the PC worlds. A lot of my IRL friends kind of stopped playing the game, and so I then found the whole rave scene. And then from the rave scene, I got really engrossed and enamored in it. And I really enjoyed meeting a whole bunch of creators specifically, because I think, at least in the context of VR chat, if you're a world creator or an avatar creator or any sort of creative, you've probably networked with a couple of people in the music scene because that's where a lot of people are. That's where a lot of people are. But as for creating content, the Twortles project is not my first channel. I've created channels, deleted them, created them since around middle school. Um, and, I've just always been creating content. I've done professional photography. I've done some videography here and there, and I decided, well, I like VR chat. There's not a lot of content about it that I personally like to watch, so why not just do it myself? And I feel like that's where the journey started.
And I gotta say, man, when I was up and coming, I was seeing the content you were making, and I was thinking to myself, like, that's something I want to do. I don't see enough of that content going around. Like, how do I do what this guy is doing? You were one of the people that really inspired me when I first started. Just to watch how you would like,
man. But I am honored.
Just to see how you would, yeah, just to see how you would deep dive into all of these different like niche communities of VR chat. Like, one of the questions I got for you is, like, what are some of the craziest niche communities you found in VR?
Oh, there's a lot of crazy niche communities. Some I can say on camera, some I can't say on camera. I guess the crazy one, I wouldn't say it's crazy. I think it's getting more popularized, is definitely, as I mentioned before, the music scene. Because you'll meet a lot of world and avatar creators and editors and programmers that you'll never have heard of until you bump into them and actually talk to them. Like I have a couple of friends who are Unity and Blender wizards, but they don't have a presence on social media at all. But they are very, very good at what they do. So I think that's kind of a crazy community to be a part of, especially if you are creating. Now, if you are somebody who just likes to chill out and do it as a hobby, you definitely could. And I think it's a great way to go out and enjoy a party atmosphere without I want to say, many of the cons of going out clubbing or bar hopping in real life. Some other ones I'd say have been popping off specifically would be the fitness communities. I mean, VR dancing is certainly one that's been around for a long time, but one that's been making waves is the Mighty Gym, created by Kugo the Mighty. I think that's a really, really awesome VR gym that people can subscribe to and go out and work out. There's a lot of
I've
really, really
never heard
lovely
about that
fitness
one. What's
instructors.
that one about?
Yeah, I mean, Mighty Gym. I mean, I've only gone for one or two sessions, so I'm not particularly the best person to ask, but I have a video on them where I kind of went around what they had to offer, why it was different from just going to a VR fitness world. And I think the difference in it is that they have actual, well, Kuka the Mighty is an actual licensed fitness instructor. Like he does
Oh,
physical training or PT, personal training, yeah, personal training in real life on top of the VR stuff. And I think they've really hit the nail on the head with the gamified fitness experience. And so interviewing some of their current trainers, one of them has lost like 40 pounds, which is a lot of weight just from working out in
wow.
VR. And I think the
That's
powerful
crazy.
part of it is that you can use any avatar and you don't really have to, I guess, feel shamed because some people do feel shame when they go to a gym and they feel self-conscious. You don't have any of that in VR. So I want to say Mighty Gym is a very good VR fitness community and a place to be. So underrated niche community for sure.
Dude, speaking about underrated niche communities, that's one of like my favorite things to find in VR chat. Like one of them was the sign community. I'm sure you've had run-ins, but people who
Yeah.
like communicate via sign, whether they were born deaf, became deaf, or they just like to learn the language. Like that's an entire group of people who are doing that. Another big one's the dance community. Like I never thought VR chat, the metaverse would be a place where dancers get together and hang out. Yet I'm seeing people teach classes on it. I'm seeing like real experts in the field, like going out and making content. I was hanging out at the VR Chat Awards back in January, and I got to hang out with Visibly and Disco Rabbit. And those guys are crazy. Dude, we were out there in the main lobby, and these guys are just straight up just like busting moves. It was so funny to watch.
Yeah.
But that just
And,
goes to say that,
oh,
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead, man. No, go ahead. It's
yeah,
the
there's
VR
just so
latency.
many niche communities like in VR chat that are blooming right now, and it's so incredible to watch.
Yeah, one dance association I can think of is specifically IDA. I think JJFX, if that's his name, I got it right. He runs a community or helps run a community called IDA. I think Fia has a video on them, but they've been sponsored by a lot of different VR companies. They do a lot of professional events. They showcase it. I think at VCAT they perform there, which I think is really amazing. And so, yeah, I think VR chat specifically is just a very good place to be when it comes to nurturing and flourishing as a creative. So nurturing your creative talents per se.
Yeah, for real. And like these different communities are awesome and great and all that. But when it comes to individuals, who are some of the coolest people you've met in VR chat?
Oh, wow. That is that's a tough question. I feel like everyone is pretty cool here in VR chat. I think cool is pretty vague, but I think all my friends I've met are pretty cool, and they've been the ones to lead the way into showing me some of the niche stuff. Like Mighty Gym, for example, it was only open for about 2 to 3 months before a friend of mine said, "Hey, you should check this out." And now they've been recently featured by VR Chat, like a full year later. So,
Wow.
my friends, they've been a pretty big inspiration for me. There's some very talented developers here that are making some really cool third-party stuff. I can't really say who specifically, but there's a lot of people who create amazing things and put it up on the VR chat Twitter timeline, I'd say. So, yeah, I don't have a very good answer for you except for, yeah, I mean, my homies and pretty much everyone I've bumped into, at least in the creator circle.
Yeah, and when you talk about bumping into people, that's one thing I love about this game is like you could just be in a random instance and run into who knows who, right? Like the first time I was just starting to make videos, the first like creator I ran into was Shrek's Big Donk. No idea who she was. Went up, asked her a random question. She couldn't believe it, right? Next thing I know, like we hang out from time to time. We see each other like, I don't know, maybe every couple months at this point. But like just to run into like a creator like that was so cool. And you get that experience here. Like I've run into Thug Owl across the time, and he's probably one of my favorite individuals ever. Homeboy is about the party, about the hangout, and that's 100% who he is. Through and through, he is 100% like he wears his heart on his sleeve. But then I've also run into like Gringus VR, like the Fushro Da girl. You know who that is? Fushro Da. Yeah, she was just chilling here in VR one day. Just happened to run into her. It's like, whoa, that's so crazy. Like never in my day-to-day IRL life would I run into these individuals. But here in VR chat, you never know who you're going to find.
Yeah, that is true. I've done the same thing where when I was also beginning my whole YouTube and when I used to do a lot of TikTok interview videos, I would run into creators who I didn't even know were creators or even VR chat staff who I didn't even know were VR chat staff. And I would just say, hey, I'm working on a project. Can I ask you a couple questions? And, I think they kind of appreciate it when you approach them as just a normal human being as opposed to like, hey, fix the game, or hey, when's the next video, right? And I think that's kind of the common ground of VR chat. Everyone can just be themselves and hang out and do their own thing for the most part.
Yeah. Speaking of which, like talking to people for the first time and trying to start that conversation, you want to bring up about how I reached out to you? That was crazy, bro. That was crazy. Oh my god.
Yeah. You sure you want me to bring it up?
Sure, man. Let's go. Let's run it. Let's run it back.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was about a year and a half ago where, yeah, a year and a half ago, you DM'd me on TikTok, and I think you were a pretty small account, and you said, hey, can I ask you a couple questions or interview you? And I said, sure, man. Like, go for it. Add me on Discord or my social media pages. And then you left me on red for about like 2 years. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. And during this point, I stopped making a lot of TikTok videos. I just wasn't really doing that kind of content anymore. Might come back, might not. But weirdly enough, I've been hanging out on X, formerly known as Twitter, doing a lot of these radio show-esque type things similar to Clubhouse called Spaces. And this guy named The Odyssey pops in, and then you start talking to me, and I said, oh, I think you're a really cool guy, man. Like, what's up with you? And he said, yeah, I've been doing this. I DM'd you on TikTok. Like, can we connect, do an interview with each other? And I said, yeah, sure. And then I opened up my DMs, and you had also DM'd me on Twitter, and I DM'd you back. And even on Twitter, you left me on red for 2 years. So now we're at this point where now I'm doing a one-on-one conversation with you after 2 years. But, I took a look at your TikTok page now. You've been popping off, man. I think you're very well spoken. I think you have a very likable personality. And I think that you're doing everything pretty right. Yeah, I don't really have any comments, but, I applaud you on your success. You're doing great.
No. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, the first time I reached out to you, a year and a half ago, I was some tiny little creator just getting started. I was so nervous and timid. I was like, oh man, this is Twortles I'm reaching out to. He's not even gonna know who I am. And like, I got busy. Like, I reached out to you. I got busy with the content. I was juggling a million different things. Never got back to it. And like in the back of my mind, it was always one of those. I'm just gonna hit this grind as hard as I can until like I'm ready to like really have an interview with you. So, a year and a half passes. I'm creating content, trying out 100 different things. I started a game night Discord. I've done interviews. I've done surveys. I've tried a million different things just to kind of find like my voice here, really. And I think I was finally ready. And you talking about Twitter and X and how you were doing spaces there. Like, I was just scrolling through my feed one day, and like occasionally you'll see like when the lives pop up and like who's live and doing what. And I saw Twortles was live. I was like, Twortles? Like the Twortles guy from like TikTok forever ago? And then I started listening, and like I was the guy who would like lurk occasionally. Like I would come into your spaces and just like sit there quietly and listen to you guys until I'd done that like 4 or 5 times over the course of like, I don't know, maybe 6 months. And then one day I had the day off. I was thinking to myself, it's been a hot minute since I've reached out to him. You guys were live, and I was like, you know what? Why don't I give it a shot? I hit that request button that allows you to like join in on the conversation, and dude, I was sweating bullets the entire time. I didn't know really you. I didn't know your homies. I didn't know what you guys were about, and I was like the new kid like trying to fit into this space, and we just started, shooting the shit together, having the conversation, and it was so much fun just to hang out with you guys.
I really appreciate it. I'm glad you got a kick out of the spaces, and that's kind of what I've been doing for the most part now. Not too many YouTube videos or TikToks or shorts or anything like that. I do have some plans, but for the most part, I've been really enjoying spaces. It feels like something where anyone can participate, join in, and have a conversation. So I'm actually kind of glad you joined in via spaces, because we were actually able to talk to each other, which I think is important as opposed to just DMing cold texts and leaving each other on red for 2 years and be like,
oh my
oh,
gosh,
is this
he's
gonna
not
be
gonna
a
let it
thing?
go.
Is this not
He's
gonna be a
not
thing?
gonna let it go.
Yeah, but I think yeah, I've been really enjoying running those spaces. But I mean, I want to throw a question over to you, because you've been doing the whole
Yeah.
VR chat content for a year and a half, and you mentioned that you looked up to some of the videos that I had created before, which, I'm honored by, actually, to know that somebody enjoyed the type of content that I put out there. But what has your experience like been creating content for VR chat for the past year and a half? Because I imagine it's not that easy.
Oh, dude, that is an entire cabal of a question. That's going to be like an onion. So much to unravel there. But how's my experience been? It has been everything I had hoped for and more. It's been wild. It's been chaos at times. It's been an absolute ton of work, incredibly fun. I've met so many cool, amazing, and beautiful human beings along the way. Like when I started VR chat, this is what really got me hooked. I could pop into any world and just hang out with people. I was at a party. I didn't know anybody. I was completely brand new, maybe put 5 hours in, and I was just asking a million questions. These veterans who have been playing forever gathered around me and started answering like all these questions that were coming off the top of my head. Then there was this one guy, and I will leave him nameless. He was in a furry avatar, one of the first furries I had ever seen, and he was like motioning people over to him in the corner. And I was like, okay, what's going on with this? And he was like trying to get people to like touch his arm, because he had a haptic feedback suit on, and he put that thing to 11, bro. People were touching it, and it was vibrating so hard you could hear it reverberate through his mic. Like, homeboy was on a
Jeez.
complete other level. And he wasn't even like communicating. He was talking through like chirps and clicks. I looked at that from the back of the room, and I was absolutely flabbergasted that there was another human being on that side of the screen. And I was like, this is my play. These are my people. I don't know what this guy is about. I've never seen him before. But whatever this world is, I have to learn more about it. And then I started doing deep dives, going into all of these different subcultures, whether that's the dance community, the deaf community, the TikTok community, and learning as much as I can from all of these different groups. And for me, it's kind of been a journey of discovery the entire way. And my TikTok, the content I make reflects that. When I learn something, when I like absorb some type of information or embed myself in some type of community, I share that with my audience. And that's just been my journey ever since.
Wow, that's amazing, man. I'm glad you've been carrying a very positive attitude into creating content for VR chat. I think that's very much needed in this space. And I think it's really awesome to see somebody taking that torch of going around asking a whole bunch of questions that people might be afraid to ask questions about, and then just rolling with it.
Yeah. two things I want to say on that. I'm a member of the PMA movement, the Positive Mental Attitude movement, hosted by one of my friends, Scarlett Raven. Shout out Scarlett Raven. She's basically building a community on TikTok of people who want to get together and make positive content. And we actually had a meet and greet a while ago, another meet and greet before that. And just to see so much positivity outflow from like one creator's heart and like explode into all this content being made is absolutely beautiful. So if you guys aren't familiar with the PMAs, I would 100% look them up, whether it's a hashtag on TikTok or even the Discord group, because they're doing some really fun stuff, and I'm happy to be a part of that gang.
That is amazing, man. You embody
Yeah.
the spirit of your avatar's shirt. I can say that much.
Yo, what's up, right? I love it, man. I love it. But that's not always the case. Sometimes I need to have real conversations, and this is something I wanted to bring up and talk to you about. So I don't shy away from the real conversations, the hard conversations, particularly when I think it can bring a lot of value to the audience. And here's something I want to get your take on. This was some heavy things, and it's not exactly my wheelhouse, and I'm learning on the job as I'm going through it. But the last podcast I had a good friend of mine come on, Mr. Chief, and he was describing to me the situation, and it goes a little something like this. And I want you to tell me, maybe just the broader audience to tell me who they think's at fault here. Is it the 27-year-old guy who drove across state lines to mess around with a minor? Or was it a 14-year-old who convincingly lied about her age with a fake ID, a fake birth certificate, and even accomplices to lie with her? So here's the story, right? Guy leading this community in VR chat, they're as far as I know, I could be wrong in this, they're kind of like a frat house. They party, they have a good time, and more power to them. You should do that. Get together with people who are like-minded. The problem is, they drink the spicy water, they enjoy themselves and have a good time. They have some things in there to make sure minors don't get in, but I guess some slip through the cracks. This one girl, 14 years old, apparently hoodwinked everybody. And she made everybody believe she was 20 years old. She had a fake birth certificate. She had a fake ID. And she even had people to lie with her. Like, that's pretty convincing when you add those numbers up. Part of the group, hanging out, she ends up getting into a relationship with the guy who's kind of running everything, right? One thing led to the next. They're probably hanging out all the time at parties, not at parties. They want to go meet IRL. He drives across 2 different states, picks her up under the false pretense that she's 20 years old, takes her over to his house, right? Hanging out, messing around, doing exactly what you'd expect. Her parents are like, okay, where's our daughter? They're freaking out. They check out their phone, and I think this is part of the story. I don't know for sure. But I think it was like she had her GPS on, and they're like, oh my God, our daughter's 2 states away. She's being kidnapped. We have to call the police right now. Police get called, go over to this dude's house, and catch him dead to rights doing what he's not supposed to. Dead to rights. And like, this is one of many situations in VR chat where this happens over and over and over again. Whether it's a predatory adult or a minor lying about their age. And this situation embodies so much of the chaos, of the problems that we have here in VR chat. And honestly, at this point, I really don't know who's at fault here. I've had a complete outpouring of support for this dude from the VR chat community. So many people are saying this dude was an amazing human being. He was the kindest person you're ever going to meet. He was just 100% misled, and like, it couldn't have happened to a better person. Yet other people are saying, how could you not know you were in a relationship with a minor? Like, how could you be under the false pretense that someone is 14 years old actually, yet you think they're 20? Especially if that's not a one-off party event and that's something that's been recurring to the point where you're in a relationship with this individual. That seems to be the sticky situation. And, that was the podcast I was on last week, and yet it's following me to this point today. I'm learning about this on the ground firsthand myself, and I've had people divide over it. I've had friends straight up cuss me out and leave me because I'm trying to learn about this situation and communicate what I'm learning to my audience along the way. So that's what I know right now. I'm working with that group who runs this, the Drunk Spartans. Hopefully I can have them on next week. I'd love to talk to them about it and get their side. But that being said, Twortles, what's your thought on all that?
Well, that's a lot to take in. It's certainly not an easy situation. I want to say I want to say every single party is at fault, but more importantly, I actually think it's the parents' fault. I think
Oh.
that's something that doesn't really get talked about. It's based off of my experience in this game that for me personally, I don't think I would want to engage in a relationship with someone through virtual reality. And that's just personal preferences. I don't like long distance dating, but I do understand that this is a very powerful tool for couples who, for example, a man who might be on military deployment is unable to hang out or spend time with his wife in a virtual or just in real life as he's on deployment, right? But he can use VR as a tool to spend time with each other. So there are some great positives to that.
Hmm.
However, uh, that being said, I know that this kind of goes deeper into the discourse of whether VR chat should be a 13 plus game or not. And that certainly has a lot of different layers. So I want to leave that to the audience's judgment. For myself personally, I can only really say that I think the parents are a little bit more at fault here rather than the 27-year-old man or the 14-year-old girl. Now, both of them, I want to say, messed up, right? 27-year-old man, I mean, part of me feels sorry for the guy, but also part of me feels like he could have done a little bit better research, especially if meeting for the first time, right? You got to be careful on the internet. 14-year-old girl, I give her a little bit more of a pass, but also, to be fair, she's 14 years old. She doesn't really understand the world. When I was 14, I was eating rocks on the playground, right? Like I wasn't really, I'm not that intelligent as a 14-year-old child. So how can you expect a 14-year-old girl to make good decisions? That's why I really defaulted towards the parents because, you know, according to your story, I don't really know too much about it, but
Yeah.
the
And
girl
I'm still
was,
learning too. I don't have all the information yet either. I'm still learning.
yeah, it took them a while to realize that their daughter was 2 states away. So I would actually argue maybe stronger parental supervision, and especially for a game like VR Chat, where you can be involved in a 3D space, which makes this game much more immersive. It's a difficult situation, and I can't say that there's a right or a wrong answer because this man was misled. This 14-year-old girl doesn't really know any better, but also the parents, what were they doing? Like, how could they just let their
Yeah.
14-year-old daughter leave their home with a random guy and then realize 2 states later, which could be anywhere from 1 hour to 6 hours, where did our daughter go? So that's kind of my take on it. I can't really make a judgment call based off of just the small amount of details you gave me, but I always, always, always strongly advocate for stronger parental supervision, especially if VR chat, the company itself is saying that it is a 13 plus platform, which, it's even if you personally disagree with it, that is the game's policy. I might not agree with it, but it is the game's policy. And I do understand that a lot of communities here try to keep 18 plus events strictly 18 plus, but as you mentioned, Odyssey, sometimes kids can fall through the cracks, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think that's a great take. I really do. That's one part of this whole story that I haven't heard yet. Is like, where's the responsibility of the parents sit? Another thing I want to mention too is, and this is a note to minors out there. If you're a minor out there, do not lie about your age. Don't do it. I understand the temptation. I know you want to. It's a bad idea. It doesn't end well for you. It doesn't end well for anybody. It hasn't worked out in any of the instances that I have heard about it. It doesn't work. Please do not lie about your age. All that's going to do is ruin not only your credibility moving forward, blacklist you from a million different groups, it's also going to put other people at risk like this. If you care about someone, if you care about these people, tell them the truth. Seriously, I've seen this problem happen again and again and again, and I cannot stress it enough. You kids out there, be honest. It's okay. Wait a couple years. You don't want to be at those parties anyways. There's nothing there for you yet. And when it comes to the other side of things, man, you also got to be aware because I'm not saying this guy is that. I'm not saying that's this case, but there are predators in this game. We can all think of examples of individuals who are taking things too far and being in places where they shouldn't, looking for minors, giving them the eye in ways that they should not be doing. We as a community have to be vigilant about that kind of thing. We have to be aware of it and not only look for those monsters, but make sure that these kids aren't getting in trouble. Like Twortles, one of the most beautiful things I have seen come out of VR chat are VR families. Older members of the community looking after the younger members, making sure that they're hanging out with the right crowd, they're getting their homework done, they're getting to bed on time, even helping them through IRL problems with relationships and family and that sort of things. If I could point to one thing that I find absolutely beautiful about this game, it's the VR families.
I think that's cute. But maybe it's kind of a crazy take for me to say that, what about your actual family? But I understand that not everyone.
Right?
I also understand that not everyone has that privilege, and I also understand that not everyone has the privilege of being able to enroll in school sports or hobbies per se, because it might not be a safe environment for them. But yeah, it's kind of a tough situation. I can sit here and say all these things because I'm no longer in school, but my only comment would be being an adult isn't as cool as people think it is. You know, just my days just consist of me going out to the gym, picking up heavy metal objects, putting them down again, and going to work 9 to 5 and playing VR chat. But yeah, that's all I really gotta say, man.
Yeah. What they didn't tell you about being an adult, the 40-hour work week. You are locked in a grind Monday through Friday. It is not as fun as you think. Enjoy
no summer break
school
either.
as I know. Oh my gosh,
no winter
I
or
miss
summer
those
break.
so much. So much I miss those. Oh my gosh. You get what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks a year for vacation? That's about it? Ugh.
So honestly, I'm
Being an
kind of
adult
curious,
sucks.
actually.
Yeah.
It sounds like, based off of the way that you're talking to your audience, a lot of your followers, I want to say your primary platform is on TikTok. Would you say a lot of them are minors?
So the way they break down the demographics on TikTok is, I think 18 to 24 is the youngest they go. They won't tell you anything below that. That is my biggest demographic, but I bet a lot of those are younger. I bet a lot of those are the 13, 14, 15-year-olds, right? I think TikTok just skews younger in general, but I mean, you throw a video game on top of that, particularly on VR chat, that's certainly the case. You hit 28, 32, that's around the end of my peak. Once you hit 33 and up, they're a completely different audience. So
interesting. That's very interesting because that's a little bit different from the content that I create on YouTube specifically, as opposed to TikTok. Yeah, TikTok is a very interesting platform to be on. That's all I can really say about it.
Yeah. What's your audience like? What spaces are you on?
Well, as you know, I used to create a lot of stuff on TikTok. I used to do a lot of interview videos similar to what you're doing now. I've also created some shorts here and there. I've also created some documentaries, but I think my audience mostly is around 22 to 32, something around there, a little bit more of an adult. Sometimes I have 18 to 21-year-olds according to my demographics, but not that many. And I think that's kind of where I lie because, man, every time I talk to people younger than me, way younger than me, I feel so lost. I actually feel like a boomer. I used to be so on top of my meme game, but it wasn't until maybe last month where somebody was trying to explain to me what a skibbity toilet was because I didn't know. I had no idea what it was. I really had no idea. They were just saying Twortles, do you know what skibbity toilet is? And I'm like, can you speak English? I don't know what that means. And they're like, no, this is super viral, and the thing has over 100 million views. And I look at that, afraid for the younger generation.
They got you with the skibbity toilet, huh?
I took a look at one video, and my brain hurt. I just could not understand it. I was actually lost, but I've also had my fair share of watching a lot of really dumb videos and saying things that adults, when I was a kid, didn't understand. So maybe it's just the generational thing. Maybe I am becoming a boomer.
You know what's wild? That generational gap has never been steeper. Like the difference between like our age and kids now is far larger than any group before it. It's far larger than us compared to like our parents or our parents compared to our grandparents. And that
I would
has
say
to be
that, yeah.
due to the acceleration of technology. Like things are advancing so fast these days that like our culture, our communities, our generations are having trouble keeping up with it.
Yeah, yeah. I think this would come at a shock for your younger audience, but I do remember a time without the internet. I do remember a time without smartphones. They just did not exist. And I remember when the iPod came out and it was super hype. I remember getting my first iPod Touch, and that was the greatest thing ever because now I can take notes on my little phone tablet thing. I had a slide to text phone. Oh shit, I am getting old when I'm saying all these things, but it's I would say life was a lot slower. And now, especially spending time in VR, and I'm sure you know it as well, there's a concept that I think Kugo the Mighty from the Mighty Gym was explaining to me and why he thinks VR fitness is so powerful. There's a concept called time compression. So the way that I would explain time compression is, have you ever played video games for a very long time and next thing you know, 8 hours pass and you wonder where your life went? It's kind of like that idea. That is time compression. And so Kugo is explaining to me that the reason why VR fitness is so powerful is that people who might think 30 minutes to an hour of fitness is a really long time. Well, if they're put in a 3D environment where there's mountains and games and lasers and bars and progress bars, that a 30-minute workout session might only feel like 10 minutes. And people haven't even realized they burned 600 calories within those 30 minutes, right? And so I think with VR being at the forefront, and your audience would know it too, time goes by very, very quickly in this game, which can be a little bit frightening when you take off your headset and you go, whoa, that was 4 hours. Especially if you don't get motion sickness.
Yeah, and you put it on the reverse end of that. You sit somebody in a classroom learning about a subject that they hate. Time is going to pass by at a snail's pace. 1 hour is going to feel like 3 days.
I remember staring at the clock in class. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember staring at it and then it actually goes backwards in time and you're like, how is this even possible?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like finding ways to make things engaging, I think is awesome. And like what you're talking about with this dude doing it for a gym, that's great. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways and 1,000 different people trying to hack your brain right now. Particularly like little tiny mobile games, any type of gambling you want to talk about, gotcha games, that sort of thing. Like they're all out there to manipulate your dopamine levels so that you do whatever it is they want you to do over and over and over again. But when you can put that type of brain chemistry, that type of hack towards something productive like working out at a gym, yo, I'm all for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a lot more instances like that in virtual reality. And especially for me, I've gotten a habit of being so, I want to say, distracted by a lot of electronics and social media that I've taken some precautions and measures. I don't know if you have, but some things like on my iPhone, for example, I will put on set times where my phone actually goes black and white because there's so much color popping at you that it's like flaring your dopamine receptors. And for me, it's like, oh, it's bedtime. My phone's going to go on black and white. And if I look at it for too long, I actually get sleepy. I go, well, this isn't any fun. There's no color on this. So there's that. Sometimes if I can't focus on one task, this might sound pretty crazy, but I'll do a second task while doing my main task, and it keeps me kind of focused, like playing chess, right? I'm playing like a chess against like a robot on the side, but then I'm like editing a video, and it's like, oh, I need a break. I'll do a couple moves on chess. Okay, and I'm going back. And that might sound pretty counterproductive, but I've made it work for myself. So I think the important part in life in general is just learning how you learn. Because if you know how you learn best, then I think that's the best way to get engaged in anything, whether it's a hobby or a creative venture.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a copy pasta right there. I think the most important thing you can do for yourself is self awareness. Understand who you are, how you work, what motivates you to get up in the morning, what type of tics you have, what are your triggers, all of that. Like, I know for myself, and this is super weird. This is super weird. But for me, I have like this like hyper competitive Michael Jordan gene where like if somebody challenges me on something, I will hyper obsess about it. Like if somebody doubts me, my skills, my abilities, etc., I will 100% lock in and just focus on one thing and one thing only until I'm good at it. And that's like the mental hack I do to like enjoy and start doing whatever it is I want. So like let's say I've got like a class I got to study for, right? And it's like a subject I absolutely hate. I will tell myself that people don't believe I can get like an A in this class. And I will reiterate that in my head 1,000 times over. It'll be the last thought I have before I go to bed, the first thought I have when I wake up in the morning. And the next thing you know, boom, I don't care what else I'm doing. I am putting everything else aside until I am absolutely destroying that class. That might not work for everybody. That's how my messed up brain works. But I've figured that out in myself. And my advice to anyone out there would be figure out how you work. Figure out what motivates you and give yourself that incentive structure along your way to do whatever it is you want to do in life. Because any pursuit you're going to pursue is going to demand a lot of your time, a lot of your attention, and a lot of your skill set. So however you can learn how to motivate yourself, I think that skill supersedes the particular skill of getting good at whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah, very well said. I don't really have too much to add to that.
Yeah. Well, I got one thing I do want to mention to you too, and it's kind of the whole reason I reached out to you back on Spaces, a couple weeks ago. We are some of the few people that I know of doing podcasts here in the Metaverse. There's a handful of them out there, I'm sure. But I wanted to reach out to you and a couple others in particular, the VR and Chill podcast, the Instance podcast, and a couple of others. Like right now, all of us are kind of doing our own things, figuring things out, like all on ourselves. And I think it'd be kind of cool to have like all of us like collab and start working together. Start like not necessarily like a full-on team where we're like all like on each other's Discords and like we're like working on the same projects, but like working alongside each other. Telling each other like what works, what doesn't work, coming on each other's podcasts. Like I got a bunch of people, I got an entire waiting list right now of like 20, 30 people who want to be on here. And I'm sure they would love to do more podcasts in case other people are interested. With that kind of a pitch, would you be interested in something like that?
I mean, putting me on the spot on a recorded session, but yeah, I mean that sounds cool, man. I mean, I don't really, I think that's a pretty good idea. I would love to see how you execute on it. I mean, if it's like a group chat, you can add me in it. If it's like a Discord, I wouldn't mind just being a part of it. Also, I think you're very passionate about this whole thing, and it almost feels like you're taking this like your full-time job in some aspects. So, I really do think that your greatest superpower right now is your enthusiasm and passion. Like that's not something that a lot of people have for sure.
Hey, I appreciate it, Twortles. I appreciate it.
I really do hope you remain very starry-eyed and bright-eyed, playing, not just making content for VR chat, but also playing on this platform. Like that's something that I think should not go away for you.
Thanks, man. No, I'll take that as a big compliment. I'm gonna put that as an accolade on my belt. Thank you. But here's why I'm kind of passionate about this, and you really hit on something there too. That's a copy pasta. Why it looks like I'm treating this like my day job. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I was in middle school, high school when Facebook really became popular, and it was like something that took off. And all my friends were using it, and social media is so cool. I'm gonna post this to my page. What's your page look like? I was like, okay, I got to go try it out. So, I go onto Facebook, log in, create an account and everything. And I was like updating it, but every time I updated it, it felt like work to me. Like everyone else was doing it for the fun because they enjoyed it. It was cool. For me, it was like a business obligation. It got to the point where I'm just like, okay, I guess I have to do this, right? It was at that moment it clicked for me. Oh my God, this is work. So like I kept doing social media again and again and again from a completely different angle than everybody else. Nowadays, my day job, my 9 to 5 is social media. I do social media for a living because I've always taken that kind of angle on it. Now, I work for a big company, a big corporation. If you know Hollywood, you know my employer. And like, I don't get to do fun stuff. It's not necessarily like the type of content I want to do. That's what this is about. That's what I'm doing right here. If I could do anything for a living, I'd want to do this. So when I'm not in my 9 to 5, I'm treating this like my day job. Because just like I was when I was in middle school, perhaps one day that's going to be making me money.
Wow. That's that's a lot to take in, but that's really cool that you have a real reason like that. I just like making videos, man.
Yo, get it.
That's it. Yeah, my reason's not as crazy as yours, but I just like making videos. I think it's pretty fun.
Yeah. I like making content. I don't like consuming content as much. And I think that's weird because like a lot of people get like the dopamine kick of like scrolling through feeds. That doesn't do much for me. That for whatever reason, my brain doesn't work that way.
You
I
need
get
the dopamine
a thrill.
kick of seeing numbers go up. Yeah. No,
I need
I
the
understand.
dopamine kick. Yeah, of like creating something that other people find meaningful. So like when people come up and like tell me like your content changed my life. I was in this dark place. I was going through X, Y, and Z. I saw this video and I started feeling better. I started implementing what you were saying and now I'm at this spot. Like those conversations mean far more to me than like anything I would see in a feed, any amount of likes I would get. Like that's the whole reason I want to do it. I want to inspire people to go out there, pursue their dreams and be the best that they can be.
Yeah, man. I think you hit the nail on the head. That's what I also enjoy too. It is so cool to see you go through a very similar route that I took like many years ago. It's actually it's almost like deja vu. That's all I can really say, man.
Yo, tell me about it. Where were you a couple of years ago?
What do you mean, where was I a couple of years ago? I was just making content. I was like scrolling through the Great Pug and talking to people in public instances, making, interview videos, trying a whole bunch of different concepts. I don't know if you've watched some of my other YouTube videos, but I've also tried doing some pretty high production stuff with a lot of editing and multiple cameras and doing a lot of long form. I really enjoyed doing the whole TikTok and shorts thing, but I think I got bullied too hard on TikTok for being a boomer. So I took my talents to YouTube. Yeah.
You got bullied out of TikTok for being a boomer. So you
Dude,
went to
TikTok
YouTube.
is so mean.
I have not had that. I have not had that experience. I really haven't.
I get so many. I used to get so many. Maybe it was because it was 2 years ago, and now VR is cool because of Apple Vision Pro and Quest 3. But at least 2 years ago, people were saying, "Go touch some grass, Twortles," and I was like, "Damn, that's." I do touch grass. I just like VR. But maybe the landscape's changed. Maybe I should come back. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's been my experience on YouTube.
Oh, that's so funny.
That's so funny.
You get bullied on YouTube and I get bullied on TikTok. That's funny.
That's hilarious, bro. Yeah, no, well, I mean, TikTok, you're always going to have those people who are like, touch grass and then leave. But like the members, like my following, my audience, the people who are coming back video after video, they're super supportive. I got this thing called Bread Gang. Have you heard about Bread Gang?
No, but please show me on Bread Gang.
Dude, Bread Gang is like the coolest thing ever. So I've been doing live streams on TikTok, and that's been kind of popping off. That was a couple months ago. And like I was meeting this community, getting to know these guys. They were at meet and greets. We were hanging out, playing game nights, all that stuff. Like I was hanging out with these guys. And I don't remember who it was. It was a small collection of a few of them, but they just started typing bread over and over again in my chat. Bread, 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 bread. And then there was like a Cheeto gang starting to pop up where people were going like Cheetos, Cheetos, Cheetos. And these guys are like starting a flame war in my chat, right? And eventually, Bread Gang started recruiting to where they were asking people to change their profile pic to an image of bread and their name to like banana bread or like pumpkin bread or some kind of bread, right? And it started catching fire. Everyone in chat was doing it, all right? And like, I made a deal with Bread Gang. I made a deal with them. I said, okay, I will endorse your Bread Gang on one condition. We're about two things now. One, we're about spreading bread, and two, we're about spreading positivity. I met with the Council of Bread Gang and they agreed, and ever since I have been endorsing Bread Gang. And what we do is this. We go, whether someone is streaming live on TikTok or whether somebody's in a VR chat world, we will rush them, give them as much bread and as much positivity as we possibly can in like 10 to 15 seconds, and then we get out. And that's what we do. That's Bread Gang. Shout out to my boys, Bread Gang. You know who you are.
Wow. That is impressive. I can say that much. That is very impressive and not easy to do. Yeah, shout out Bread Gang. Yeah, that's cool.
For real. And so like that's the type of community I've been finding in like TikTok. Like not necessarily negative, not necessarily bad, but yo, we got a Bread Gang and these guys are amazing.
That's so random, but also very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Have you found anything like that in like the community, the audience that you've been working with?
Yeah, I don't think I have a bread gang per se, but I think by creating content and by networking with a lot of creators, I've met a good group of people who I've been able to talk to, share content ideas with, and have real takes on. But also, I also try not to forget to talk to my friends in real life and have real conversations with them because they know me outside of my VR personality. So, yeah, I don't have a bread gang, but as opposed to a gang of people spamming bread in my chat, I think I have a gang of people who have real open and honest conversations. I mean, it's also what my spaces are for. They kind of jokingly now say, Twortles, it's no longer your space, it's our space. I go, nice. That's awesome.
That's so funny. One thing I will say is like when I reached out to you on Spaces, when we were having that initial conversation, I was sweating bullets. When we were having that conversation, one thing I admired about you was that you were willing to push back. I was like pitching the idea of like the podcast group, like getting together and people like hanging out, getting to know each other. And you were the first person who wasn't necessarily yes and. Like you asked investigative questions. You really pressed the idea to see if it was something that had like legs under it or if it was just another run of the mill, like, phantom idea. And I appreciated that about you. I admired that. It's like you were actually seeking truth in that conversation.
Yeah, that I wasn't trying to be funny when I did that, but also I think for me, part of my background outside of the VR industry is I also get to talk to a lot of investors. I also get to hear pitches here and there. And so sometimes you hear a really good idea, but then when you actually start poking into it, it's actually got a lot of holes like Swiss cheese, and it doesn't really, you have too many holes and it's no longer just Swiss cheese, it's just cheese with holes, right?
Yeah.
And I think by having that experience and talking to a lot of high profile individuals, they've also kind of changed the way that I talk as well, because I remember saying something like, bridge the gap. And then one guy straight up started laughing his butt off and said, oh no, he said bridge the gap, it's over. And I was kind of confused because I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, I just hear it so often. You're only allowed to use it once during this pitch. And he was kind of joking, but I could tell from his perspective, he's just heard it so much and it's so much fluff in their words and also their pitches, where you can throw a lot of these big words at people and sound smart, but the concept or the idea of it doesn't really make sense. So yeah, and that's part of the reason why I felt that when you were pitching it to me that you did have a real idea under it. But I did want to ask the questions of, did you actually do your homework? Because I've heard very similar things over and over and over again. But, you seem to have a really good head on your shoulders. You're very well spoken and enthusiastic again, which is really big positive going for you. So I'm kind of interested to see on how you execute it. Execution is the big thing here.
Absolutely. And I think what makes a difference between, good ideas and bad ideas is how hard people are willing to work towards them. That's certainly an ingredient to the recipe. And what I find is it's a meritocracy. If you put in the work, you are going to be rewarded for your merit. If you do not put in
Yep.
the work, you will not be rewarded for your lack of merit. And you can see that in the people who are creating content, the people who are on the grind, creating again and again, improving on what they had done before. Those are the people who fail upwards to success. And a lot of people along that line fail and fail and fail and quit. Fail and quit, fail and fail and quit. And yet the people who make it to the top are those who are okay with failing and continuing along the process anyways. They're the ones who show up again and again and again. And that's what I'm finding. So like, have I been perfect along my content creation journey? Absolutely not. I've failed probably more than most people even try. But the thing is, this is something I'm dedicated to. This is something that I want to do and something that I want to be about. So I'm going to keep showing up and keep working. And as far as the idea goes, I want it to be non-committal. I want it to be super easy, super lax, and not put a burden on everybody. I know you got a busy life. I know Sassafras has a busy life. We all got a million other things going on, and we don't necessarily want another time-consuming thing on our plate. So honestly, it would just be like, hey, come on to a podcast like, I don't know, twice a year. Let me know if like something cool is happening and you want me to be a part of it. And likewise, like if you want me on your show, let me know. I'll come on, we'll hang out, have a good time, share some ideas. I'm all about it.
Yeah, I think that's inspirational, man. Yeah, I think you've got the right mind and right attitude. But also, I'll leave. It's been like an hour, so I don't know if we need to wrap up. But
Yeah,
you
we
know,
can
I
wrap this
will
up.
want to share. I will want to share one funny idea or dream of mine, almost. You know, I've never doxed myself. There's no pictures of me, at least under Twortles. And you know, this isn't an open invitation to dox. I just personally just haven't done it, right? But you know, I think it'd be so cool and so neat where, let's say you held a convention or you went to TwitchCon and you got to meet a whole bunch of your VR audiences, right? I would love nothing for there to be a VR people meetup and your audience and your friends are all swole and jacked and look like chads and chadettes because that's also low key one of the reasons why I like to go working out because I'm a little bit afraid like oh people's first impressions of me IRL. Well, I want to make sure I look good because if you take care of your body, you're taking care of your mind, and we wouldn't want to have a dream situation. So there's that.
Yeah, seriously. Hey, I'm scared of you taking off that hoodie now. What do you look like underneath that? You some chiseled Giga
I
Chad
got
over there?
nah, nothing on this hoodie, man. It's just some hands, and honestly, to make this performance good, we removed all my limbs, so I guess I'm a ghost.
If you say so. All right, Ghost Twortles, where can people find you at?
Yeah, you can find me mostly on YouTube, youtube.com/Twortles. I do have a TikTok. It hasn't been updated, but if you want to go ahead and give me a follow, it's Twortles VR, TWORTLES VR, but there's an underscore at the end because my original account got banned when I put up a e-girl, which, you know, I was kind of confusing, but it is what it is. But also, if you're mostly on Twitter or X, you can find me at Twortles VR. So it's basically Twortles or Twortles VR that you can find me at, TWORTLES, and I'm sure Odyssey will have the spelling underneath.
Yeah, I'll get you. But man, I just want to say thank you so much for coming, being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. It's great to talk to you. You're inspirational. Keep up the great work.
Hey, man, appreciate it. All right. See you again next time.